Thank you. As I was saying, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. It's Wednesday. It's the ninth day of November in the year of our Lord 2022, and we've gathered like we do at Olive Grove Baptist Church in Norfolk, Virginia, and around, that we might consider the Word of God and its implications for our developing lives. And we ask you to join me as we begin our time together in prayer. Eternal God, we are grateful to you for the privilege that allows us to assemble once again in your house and in your name with your word as the centerpiece for our conversation. Open the book for us and make the book speak so that we might better understand, more clearly understand what it is you're calling us to be and to be like in our pursuit of your will and your way for our lives. This is our prayer, and we ask it through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord, in whose name we ask every blessing. Amen. We've been walking with David for a while now, and we have had an overlay of the Fowler's stages of faith, and we are using David's example, his development, his growth, as a means by which we can make some assessments about our own spiritual growth, our own increase in faith. We have challenged each other in this time that we'd come to some decisions that it's not good for us to stand still in our faith, but to grow in grace and in our knowledge and understanding of who Jesus is, so that the things that we do in service to God might match the gifts that God blesses us to experience, and so that our service would be as good as it could be based on everything that God has placed in us. We used David's life because David is perhaps the most celebrated person in the Old Testament, and perhaps even more than Moses. We refer to David in so many ways because of his position in the line that produces Jesus Christ. And so Jews and Christians are very interested in the life of David, and for a good reason. And it's kind of ironic when you think about all we know about David, because one thing we know about David is that he comes from humble beginnings, and that he is identified early on in his life as a boy, as a person who has been selected for a role that it'll be years before he occupies. We know him as a heroic figure because of his demonstrated bravery and the work that he accomplished as a military leader, all at a very young age. And he describes himself as a poor person, so that we don't celebrate David because he had so much wealth. We might think of Solomon like that, but we think of David as a poor person, and he describes himself as a poor person. And one of the things true about David in that emerges tonight in our conversation is David was persecuted for doing good. He did all kinds of good things. He did what he was asked to do, and he did one thing that he wasn't really asked to do, but he took up the challenge of fighting the giant on his own. He wasn't asked to do that, not directly, but he took up the challenge and faced the giant and vanquished his foe. And yet, as time went by, he found himself more and more the subject of persecution. He was persecuted for doing good. Now, how many words can you think of that are synonymous with persecuted? What does it mean to be persecuted?
Oppressed.
Oppressed, that's a word. Lynched. Well, when you think of lynched, that's such a permanent word. You only get lynched once. So,
You could be dogged.
huh?
Dogged.
He dogged, okay. All
Picked
right.
on. Picked on.
Uh-huh. Discriminated against. Use your microphone. Uh-huh. He was wronged. He was slandered. There were many lies told about him.
Sabotaged.
Okay, he was sabotaged.
Framed.
What's that? Framed. Okay. Yeah, David was a man who was persecuted. And up until now, especially since between chapter 17 and 19 in our conversations, we have seen David rise and then become endangered. He's been on the run from a jealous, unstable king who had at first loved him. He receives help from his wife, Michal, and his friend Jonathan, and his mentor Samuel. And then chapter 20 opens with our hero perplexed as he asks Jonathan, his friend, to explain his crime. Between chapter 20 and chapter 22, he's persecuted. And if you've ever been persecuted, what did it feel like to you? Have you ever been persecuted? What did it feel like?
It's hurtful.
Painful? Okay. Anybody else? Have you ever been persecuted? Somebody said to be persecuted is to be oppressed. And if you buy that, I have a feeling everybody who can hear me has been oppressed. My question is, what does it feel like?
Painful.
Yeah, I think that's what he said. Describe the pain of persecution.
I would say ashamed. I mean, you just feel like no one cares about what you just went through, and you feel like you just have no more. I would say feelings, emotions left to try to go on.
Abandoned,
Yes.
numb,
Fearful.
frightened. I think that's all likely true, and all that happened to David. He feared for his life. He was certainly abandoned and put out by the person who had once loved him. So let's start reading at chapter 20, verse 1, and we're going to examine David's persecuted life.
And David fled from Naoth and Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, "What have I done? What is mine inquiry?
Iniquity.
Iniquity. And what is my sin before thy father that he seeketh my life?"
It's King James Version. The problem is, as you know, David has been, and this is kind of summarizes our conversation from last week. David has gone from being Saul's favorite song singer and writer, the one who calmed Saul down when he was distressed, the one who would come to Saul's rescue. And Saul at one point said to David and to Jonathan, he didn't want David ever to leave his side. He didn't want David to go back home. He wanted David to stay with him at all times because he never knew when he might need a song. And David was the psalmist. He was the songwriter. And so here in this one verse, you see David doesn't understand why Saul is out to kill him, but he knows that Saul is out to kill him. If you remember last week's conversation, he threw a spear. He said he would pin David to the wall, and David is having a hard time trying to understand how he could be so loyal and so faithful to Saul, and Saul could be so mean to him. All right, verse 2.
He stripped off.
The other two. There you go.
Never, Jonathan replied. You are not going to die. Look, my father doesn't do anything great or small without letting me know. Why would he hide this from me? It isn't so.
Jonathan is in disbelief. Jonathan can't believe that his father would turn on David this way, and he denies it. He defends his father. He's caught in a bad place because David is his friend, and Saul is his father, and he wants the two of them to get along, maybe for his sake. All right.
But David took an oath and said, your father knows very well that I have found favor in your eyes, and he has said to himself, Jonathan must not know this, or he will be grieved. Yet as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, there is only a step between me and death.
Yeah, remember that song, Life is Just One Step from the Cradle to the Grave? I've always thought that that song was inspired by these words. It's just a short step. It's not far. You're here, and then you're not. And David feels vulnerable, and he feels exposed, and he feels that listen to this man criticizing his friend's father. That's a dangerous place to go, to criticize his best friend's father, to accuse Saul of lying to Jonathan, of concealing the truth of his intentions from his own son. All right?
Jonathan said to David, whatever you want me to do, I'll do for you. So David said, look, tomorrow is the new moon feast, and I am supposed to dine with the king. But let me go and hide in the field until the evening of the day after tomorrow. Mm-hmm. If your father misses me at all, tell him, David earnestly asked my permission to hurry to Bethlehem, his hometown, because of an annual sacrifice is being made there for his whole clan. If he says very well, then your servant is safe. But if he loses his temper, you can be sure that he is determined to harm me.
So there David wants to put Saul to a test, and he enlists Jonathan's aid in the lie. Tell him I'm going to hide out in the field tomorrow, and I'm going to leave my seat empty at the table. And if your father asks about it, lie to him for me. Tell him that I went home to celebrate the feast with my own family. So David, this is the first time we have seen David engaging in a lie and inviting somebody else to join him in it. Seems kind of uncharacteristic for the man after God's own heart, doesn't it?
Not to save his own life.
Huh?
Not to save his own life.
Well,
Like, forget this, I want to save my own life. So that's what he looked at it as.
well, clearly that's what he looked at it as, which is one of the places where I've tried to get us to look at David and other characters in the Bible as ordinary people, not super people, not supermen. They don't have some qualities that the rest of us don't have. He's just a man like we are, and this is an indication of David's moving back and forth in the development of his faith. And so it is that most of us move back and forth. We don't generally go back to stage 0, to that completely unindividuated, the primal kind of basic Romans, was it 3, kind of measure of faith. We don't usually go back that far, but we go back to lower stages from time to time, depending on exigent circumstances, depending on what's going on. And so here's David, who we had described before as at least stage 3 with the synthetic conventional faith, a place where he has synthesized, he's put together different experiences, different knowledge, and different abilities in his life, and he's come to make some personal decisions about what things meant, as opposed to that Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, tooth fairy kind of faith, of the mythic, literal faith. That's very young. A person who thinks like that, and he's gotten beyond the initial projective faith, where he understands himself based on the way he understands and experiences the people around him. And now David has gone from trusting Saul to not trusting him. He loved Saul and experienced love from Saul, and began to organize his thinking and his life based on some input from tending Jesse's sheep and killing the giant in the land, and now the experience of living in the palace and having the king's son as his best friend, and having heard the king promise to the man who killed Goliath his own daughter's hand in marriage. And so, and embarrassed, David said, "No, man, I can't do that. What I look like in the king's family? I can't be the king's son-in-law." He didn't think enough of himself. But it's not quite the reflective, differentiated faith. To be differentiated is to understand yourself as a person, unique and particular from everybody else. So you don't depend on what everybody else is doing for the decisions that you make. You're not trying to be like anyone else. You're trying to be yourself, completely differentiated, as compared to the primal undifferentiated. The undifferentiated infant doesn't know anything. He doesn't know himself, where he ends and another person begins. But the completely differentiated person has a measure of self-confidence that does not depend on what other people think, or what other people say, or what other people do. He is his own man, and he's come to that place. But now, his circumstances have made his life shaky, kind of turned things upside down on him, and he's fearful. And Deacon Stokely said he's fearful enough to lie. And maybe in the right circumstances or the wrong circumstances, anybody will lie. What you think? Yeah.
Yes. and the same about Abraham, he lied.
Yeah.
He said, tell him that you my sister. When you trying to go to Egypt. He was scared the king was going to take his wife and kill him. So yeah, we do lie. And the Bible tells us no. And we say the truth ain't news, we have lied. Because everybody will tell a lie, just like this case, if we see, he told a lie to save himself. And and still he's the man of God's own heart, but we still make mistakes.
Yeah.
And he realized if I don't say this, I'm gonna get killed. So he said, forget this, I'm gonna do the right thing now to myself. For myself, he wasn't thinking about the situation at the time where if he just told the truth, that God will protect him.
Yeah. Well.
But he told a lie so he could get over, and in the long run, it still catches us.
Yeah. Is that a hand, Deacon Bell? Or are you just waving? All right. Keep reading, Cornelius.
Well,
Wait a minute. Hang on. We got two comments. Mary and
well,
Reverend
it
Bell.
seems like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are known for lying. And none of them disciples was too tough in the beginning either. So, I mean, being a person after God's own heart is about relationship, not about perfection.
Yeah, and Jacob may be the chief liar among all that list of lions you met, other than Trump, Jacob is the king liar. Yes, Reverend.
His motive is because he told Jonathan, you can kill me. So it wasn't about him trying to save his life. Because Saul was he wanted to know for sure what Saul was up to. And this was his way of finding out what Saul was really up to. Because he told him, he said, you can kill me yourself.
As a matter of fact, it was his preference, rather than being killed by the king, to be killed by his friend.
So, looking at the lie, because at some point, everybody, I don't know whether it's like a lie or you kind of.
Well, it's not true.
No, but what I'm saying is it wasn't true. But the reason that you said what you said, to find out the information that you needed to know.
I see.
So it's almost like a fleece.
Maybe, okay, you can make that. Go ahead, Deacon Pope.
You're in verse 8, right?
What's the last verse we read, Neil?
Verse 7.
Yeah, okay, the slay me part that I was talking about is in verse 8. He's looking like that. He knows that he's telling the truth, and he's so truthful with it because he told him, he said, if there be in me iniquity, slay me thyself. For why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? That means why wasting time if I'm right?
Yeah, let's read 7 and 8 together, Neil. 7 first, Mary, and then 8.
If he says, very well, then your servant is safe.
So if the king says it's all right for David to be going to Bethlehem.
But if he loses his temper, you can be sure that he is determined to harm me. As for you, show kindness to your servant, for you have brought him into a covenant with you before the Lord. If I am guilty, then kill me yourself. Why hand me over to your father?
What would he be guilty of?
He would be guilty of lying on Saul, because he's told Jonathan that Saul's trying to kill him.
Well, it's so undefined. David just called it iniquity. That was his first question. What did I do?
So it brings us complete back to the original question about persecution. Because here he's being persecuted. He don't know why. But clearly it's coming from every side. So when you're being persecuted unjustly, you don't know why, but you know you are.
Well, it's coming from the king.
King.
He doesn't deserve the threat. He doesn't deserve to be put to death. And what's the king's problem?
He was jealous of him. He was jealous of what he had done.
He's jealous and envious. Saul wants to stay in power as long as he can, and he wants Jonathan to succeed him, and he wants the throne to remain in his family. But what's his problem?
Whose problem?
Saul's
problem.
problem.
Bain's problem was he was jealous and he did not want to release that kingdom and the power and authority that he had.
What's his real problem?
I think
Disobey God.
Okay.
I
think one of the earlier verses said that he was upset because David had favor, and the Lord left an evil spirit on Saul for trying to undermine him. And
Okay.
isn't that one of the common denominators of persecution? It's not justified.
Yes, Deacon Pope.
I think that he was afraid that he would go outdo his son and take the kingship.
He would what?
He would become king instead of his son.
I think that's true. I think Saul wanted to remain king, and when Saul left the throne, he wanted Jonathan to succeed him. But if Jonathan had succeeded Saul, what would that do for the line that connected the king and the Christ? Instead of being born into the house of David, he would have been born in the house of
Jonathan.
Saul, because Saul would have been the first, and it was nominally the first king, but he was the king that the people asked for, and not the king that they interrupted God's program and they interrupted God's schedule, and you can do that if you want to, but it won't end well. And it didn't end well for Saul because God had one plan and Saul had another. Yes, ma'am.
And it speaks to sometimes we're looking at the lie. Sometimes the lie is there to keep you in line of your faith walk. Because David was a man, or you can see that he trusted and his faith was in God. So when he came up with this
Scheme.
yes, it all was playing into, and I like scheme better than I like the lie.
Okay.
Because he had to work it so his faith was, he was believing what this is going to work, because I need to know if this king will want to kill me or not.
Okay.
It's not like I'm trying to save my life.
Okay.
He knew the king wanted to kill him. He threw the spear at him 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a clue.
4 times.
Yeah.
Not just
Sometimes you don't
4
want to
times.
believe what you see.
I don't know about that one. If somebody throw a spear at me, I think he trying to hurt me. I mean, I'm gonna see that very clearly.
I could believe one time, Minister Al.
That's why shooting a gun at me.
But 4 times? No.
Well, but now you think about it, even Jonathan didn't believe it. When David referred to that, Jonathan said, "Come on, man, that's my dad. He wouldn't do that to you." And he was wrong. He lied because he trusts his father, and he knows a different Saul than this Saul who has stepped out of the will of God and has tried to frustrate the plan of God by introducing his own thing. Jonathan had already made up his mind that he wasn't interested in being king, and he was okay with being second in command. The plan was between he and David, and he refers to the covenant that they made in previous chapters, that they had agreed that when David became king, Jonathan would be his right hand, and so that's what they were referring to now in these 2 verses, that we have already agreed that we're going to work this out. Yes, Mary.
Pastor, clear me up. Has David already been anointed by Samuel, and shouldn't they have known that?
They did, which is why Saul he doesn't trust David. I think we read that last week. Saul believes that with David's notoriety, David's celebrity, and I think the line was, what else is there for him to take but the kingdom? So the people are celebrating. Saul killed thousands, David killed 10,000s, and the more they sing, the more Saul becomes envious and upset and jealous and fearful. And when David and Jonathan become friends, then Saul feels even more vulnerable, more exposed, and he's disappointed because he thinks his son should want to be king. Why you want to be number 2 when you can be number 1 because you're my son? And Jonathan doesn't see it that way. Jonathan is cool with
And
being
also Saul's daughter has went against him when she helped David escape from him.
Yeah, Michael. When they found out, I don't. Have we gotten to that part yet?
Past that.
Yeah. When we got to when Michael found out that Saul was out to kill David, she made up a statue or an idol or a doll or something and put it in the bed and put some fake hair on it. And when they came to tell David that the king wanted to see him, she said, he's sick. And so the king said, well, they'll bring him here on his litter. And when they went back for the litter, and they found out that it wasn't there at all. And so when she was confronted about it, Michael told her daddy that he made me do it. He said if I didn't, he was going to kill me. And I was afraid. Another lie.
Another lie to save yourself. So you would, there you go, show you again. You gonna tell a lie to save yourself. And there she go again.
Okay. I'm gonna recommend some adjustments to the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not lie unless it's to save your life. I'm gonna write a memo to God saying, we're gonna change it because Deacon Stokely says.
The proof is in the pudding, though, Pastor.
I say what?
The proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, well,
both on lie.
I think you're the one who said it after Paul. You quoted Paul. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So I told you they're not supermen. They're not superheroes. They're just men and women. All right, verse 9 and following.
Never, Jonathan said, if I had the least inkling that my father was determined to harm you, wouldn't I tell you? David asked, who will tell me if your father answers you harshly?
Keep on.
Come, Jonathan said, let's go out into the field. So they went there together. Then Jonathan said to David, I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, that I will surely sound out my father by this time the day after tomorrow. If he is favorably disposed toward you, will I not send you word and let you know? But if my father intends to harm you, may the Lord deal with Jonathan, be it ever so severely, if I do not let you know and send you away in peace. May the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. But show me unfailing kindness like the Lord's kindness as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. And do not ever cut off your kindness from my family, not even when the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth.
It's so interesting that he speaks in the first person that way or the third person that way. When he talks about himself and when he talks about David. But he seems skeptical, Jonathan does, about whether he can really depend on his father. Now, by this time, we already know that Saul is shaky. And it's not clear that he has not lost his mind because he's been acting like somebody who's lost his mind. His jealousy, his anger, his rage are all unfounded, and it seems to come out of nowhere, and for no good reason. It's not. There's no real credible threat that says that David is plotting to remove Saul. David is not trying to expedite the date of his own coronation. He's not trying to get to the throne by going through Saul. He's biding his time, and it seems to me faithfully, because he does what Saul says do. When Saul reneges on the deal for him to marry the oldest daughter, and Michal, the next daughter, is in love with David, and so the two of them marry. But they don't. But there's the price for Saul works out a deal when David says, "I'm a poor man. I don't have the kind of dowry that I need to be able to give." So the king says, "Okay, I tell you what. Go kill me 100 Philistines and bring back 100 foreskins." And so David gets his army together, and they go out, and not only do they kill 100, they kill 200 and bring back 200 foreskins and leave them before the king. And the king consents to David's hand in marriage for Michal's hand in marriage to David. And so he's not in any way participating in a manner that is legitimately threatening for Saul. Not that he doesn't feel threatened, but sometimes you feel threatened when you feel guilty. So Saul knows of David's anointing. He knows of Jonathan's friendship with David. So he feels, as he examines the things that he has done or not done, even accepting the anointing from Samuel himself to become king, and things aren't working out for him, and it seems that every battle that David fights, he wins. He keeps on winning over and over, and the text says it time after time. The Lord was with David, but he was not with Saul. And when Saul feels himself so alone and so without God, and he sees David being blessed hand over fist, he becomes more and more envious and more jealous, and more he finds himself enraged.
Even when he asked for David to bring him the foreskins, he was hoping that the Philistines would kill David.
Yeah, keep on sending him out. Send him back out. Send him back out. Send him back out. Send him back out. And every time he sent David out, David won. Now, from between 1967 and 1994, I had at least one military science course every year. And some years I had more than one. And sometimes the science course was 12 weeks or 9 weeks or 52 weeks. 26 weeks. But I had a course at least once a year, every year, all the way to my retirement time. But David, we don't have any indication that he went to basic training. We don't have a clue that he went to OCS. All we know was he killed Goliath, and Saul made him an officer in the army. He was younger than most of the soldiers he led because he was too young to be in the army. You had to be 20 to be in the army, and David was a teenager. Not only was he in the army, he was a leader of men in the army, and he was successful at what he did. Why?
God was
Because
with
the
him.
Lord was with him.
him.
Yes, sir.
He was highly favored.
Yeah. The Lord was with him. Deacon Pope said he was highly favored. So he was part of the plan that had been put in place before the foundation of the universe for the Messiah to come. David was a player in that string of characters, and so had Saul been successful, he would have violated the plan that God had put in place, and it wasn't going to happen. Yes, Mary.
We've got a question from the chat room. We're going back to what you said about Saul's challenge to David. And the question is, why do we think Saul decided to ask for foreskins? Is there any insights in that?
Well, because David had already said he was poor, and he didn't have money for a dowry. That's why he turned down the first time. He said, I don't belong in the king's family. And so the king told his men to go to talk to David privately and tell him that, you really ought to be the king's son-in-law. And the king really wants you to be his son-in-law. And so he drops the price of a dowry from treasures to these foreskins, because he can afford that.
And also, foreskins told them that he killed Gentiles and not Jews, because all Jews were circumcised. So in order to bring foreskins, it had to be from Gentiles, the Philistines.
Yeah, well, that was the opponent, wasn't it? Yes, Mary.
It also occurred to me it's a different, more subtle form of assassination because, one, to get somebody foreskin, you know they got to be dead. So you got a lot of work to do if you're going to get that. And two,
You don't even know, but
that's
go ahead.
That's a bloody mess. And could he have brought some discredit to the character of David by having people participate in something as cruel as that?
Well, he killed tens of thousands. If you already killed him, what he can't bring? He could bring back 100 heads, like he brought back the head of Goliath. But I think that this is much more humiliating and logistically much more practical thing to do. But and I'm just glad I didn't have to witness the scene, because the procedure, I just don't imagine it was very delicate. And I think sometimes they might have cut off too much, because it just wasn't. It was just not that. They didn't have a scalpel. So this is a rough cut. So it's the proof, and if David didn't have any money and he felt like he needed to leave a dowry, it's that two-edged sword that Cornelius talks about. He wants to send the man out to be killed because he's just a boy. He's not supposed to be able to win like this, but he does, because Deacon Pope says he was highly favored because the Lord was with him and he was not with Saul. All right. Mary?
So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May the Lord call David's enemies to account." And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. Then Jonathan said to David, "Tomorrow is the new moon feast. You will be missed, because your seat will be empty."
And David has already said, when the time comes, I'm just going to sit out, and we're going to use that as a test to see what kind of mood the king is in. Okay?
The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid when this trouble began, and wait by the stone Ezel. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though I were shooting at a target. Then I will send a boy and say, "Go find the arrows." If I say to him, "Look, the arrows are on this side of you. Bring them here." Then come, because as surely as the Lord lives, you are safe. There is no danger.
That's the code. He's talking in code. So I'm going to have to call out loud enough for you to hear. And when you hear me talking to the boy, if I tell him this, then it's cool. But if I tell him that, then it's not cool. So stay put, stay hidden. So they work out this code between them. So that gives him an excuse for talking loud, for yelling in the field, loud enough for David to hear, even though David is in the cut. Okay?
But if I say to the boy, look, the arrows are beyond you, then you must go, because the Lord has sent you away. And about the matter you and I discussed, remember, the Lord is witness between you and me forever.
Now, they have made this covenant. They made this agreement that Jonathan's house for the future is going to be cared for. And David's not going to kill Jonathan's family, and he's going to see to it that they are protected. Yes, sir.
Yeah, oh, Jonathan made him a side deal. He said, I'm going to protect myself.
Well, and his future, because that he and Saul have different perspectives about what the future should be like. Saul is relatively short-sighted as far as I'm concerned, because what he sees is himself on the throne as long as he can be on the throne, and then handing it over to his son. But Jonathan is more forward-looking than that, and maybe more faithful than that. Maybe Jonathan is more trust God than that. But he made a deal. Normally, when people make a covenant, there's some eating that takes place. So when you make a covenant, they say you cut a covenant. So on the occasion to solidify the arrangement, they would have eaten something. They would have broken bread and shared it with each other. There's not many more intimate things you can do than eat with another person. And so here, these two friends, they operate on a handshake based on the text, because there's no indication of them as in other covenants cutting the covenant. So they trust each other because they are friends. Yes, sir. Deacon Pope.
When you make that covenant, that means also that you have to be eating the same thing.
Well, yeah, you eat from the same meal.
Right.
But you also have to look at this, but Jonathan was a good friend.
Yeah.
And he was very loyal too, because even though he said he had doubts that his father wasn't going to do what he did.
Right.
But he still put the test to his father and went and did what he did for David to make sure that he wasn't unsure what was going on. Mm-hmm. So that's show you his loyalty to David was way a long time ago when they changed. He gave his rose to him.
Well, I think that's the conflict.
Yeah.
Here he gets to pick my friend or my father. He wants them both to be happy. He wants them both to get what they want. He wants them both to stay alive. He wants to be loyal to his father, but he wants to be loyal also to his friend. So Jonathan is a conflicted man, and which is a tough place to be when you're trying to please more than one person.
And even though Jonathan was conflicted, I think Jonathan went with what he thought God would have him to do. Because he said, as the God of Israel, this is what I would do. And I love you more than I love myself. And David had also said that he loved Jonathan more than himself. Yeah. So they were tight. And the only thing that Jonathan was conflicted about was his father. But as far as him and David and him and God, he was cool with that.
Right. Well, that's the conflict. The conflict is do I choose my father or do I choose my friend? Yes, Reverend.
And do you choose your father knowing who your father is? Mm-hmm. Because knowing that your father is the king and you're next in line, mm-hmm. automatically, it puts Jonathan in this place of knowing the loyalty, because there is a sense of loyalty to your family. Mm-hmm. But friendship, knowing what God has mm-hmm. in store, and the covenant that he had made, these two friends had made.
Yeah. So, and I think let's read a little bit more. I think we're going to see a thing or two about this loyal king father.
So David hid in the field, and when the new moon feast came, the king sat down to eat. He sat in his customary place by the wall, Obviously, Jonathan and Abner sat next
He
to
got
Saul.
he's got his back to the wall so that he can keep everything in front of him.
But David's place was empty. Saul said nothing that day, for he thought something must have happened to David to make him ceremonially unclean. Surely he is unclean.
So if David had touched something that he should not have touched, if he had had sexual intercourse with his wife, he would have been ceremonially unclean and therefore not permitted to come to the feast for at least a day. So the king says David must be dirty. You riding dirty.
But the next day, the second day of the month, David's place was empty again. Then Saul said to his son Jonathan, "Why hasn't the son of Jesse come to the meal, either yesterday or today?"
He's insulted now. He's insulted. He didn't call him by his name. He called him Jesse's son.
Jonathan answered, "David earnestly asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem."
He put the word earnestly in a lie. David earnestly asked me. No, he really did. No, he asked me. He said, "Can I go home?" And I said, "Yeah, man, go home. Go ahead, go be with your folks." That joker said earnestly as part of a lie.
He said, "Let me go because our family is observing a sacrifice in the town and my brother has ordered me to be there.
Now he telling a lie on somebody else.
If I have found favor in your eyes, let me get away to see my brothers. That is why he has not come to the king's table." Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan, and he said to him, "You son of a perverse and rebellious woman, don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of the mother who bore you?"
Whew, he called him some dirty words.
"As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die."
So there it is. There it is. So if you don't take care of David, you will never be king. Saul clearly has an idea that he wants Jonathan to be king. Jonathan is not in the same place. And so his father, with a lot of bass in his voice, and said, "Now you go get him and bring him back here because I'm going to kill him."
Sounds like he had some issues with Jonathan's mother, too.
Well, I don't, Jonathan's poor mama didn't have nothing to do with that. And so the king didn't have to say all that stuff, calling her a perverse woman, perverse and rebellious woman. I wonder if that's what he really said. He called her some dirty stuff. And then called Jonathan a dirty name. Yeah, but all that stuff don't go in the Bible. But Deacon Stoke would say you can fill in the blanks. Come on with it.
Why should he be put to death? What has he done, Jonathan?
Two questions. Why should he be put to death? He's innocent. What has he done? If he has done something, tell me what it is. David has already said, I don't know why he's out for me like that. I didn't do anything. And Jonathan asked David's question of his father, what's the beef?
But Saul hurled his spear at him too.
At him.
Kill him.
Yeah. At him. I like the way you put that. You put a T-O-O. But he hurled his spear at Jonathan
to
also.
kill him.
So not only did he try to kill David, this is a violent man. So you just in the preceding verse, he wants to kill David so that Jonathan could be the king. But when Jonathan started talking crazy, then the king said, "Okay, I got something for you too," and he threw the spear at Jonathan.
Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David.
I mean, yeah, he crazy.
Jonathan got up from the table in fierce anger. On that second day of the feast, he did not eat because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. In the morning, Jonathan went out to the field for his meeting with David. He had a small boy with him. And he said to the boy, "Run and find the arrows I shot." As the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called out after him, "Isn't the arrow beyond you?"
The boy is far away, and so Jonathan's got to shout. And he's got to shout loud enough for David to hear the signal.
Then he shouted, "Hurry, go quickly, don't stop." The boy picked up the arrow and returned to his master. The boy knew nothing about all this, only Jonathan and David knew. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and said, "Go, carry them back to town." After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever.'" Then David left, and Jonathan went back to the town.
All right, thank you. That's next week we'll take up at the first verse in chapter 21. So that takes us through this 20th chapter. We get to see the picture of the Jonathan's loyalty, loyal enough to lie to his father for David, and to try to do what he can to protect the life of his friend, and balance that desire with the relationship that he wants to have with his father. But his father has made it complicated because he's become erratic and irrational. And so next week we'll start to see the exile David running away, trying to get away from the madness of Saul. And that's where we'll take up next week, chapter 21, verse 1. We'll have the next Bible study at Olive Grove is going to be tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock with Reverend Linda Holly in our fellowship hall. And after that, we'll have our regular Sunday morning Bible study at 9:30. Following that Bible study will be the Tuesday Bible study, which happens at noon with Dr. Sampson as Can We Talk? And then we'll be back here next Wednesday. In the meantime, meet us here Sunday morning for our Sunday school and morning worship. We'll be thrilled to have you as a part of the participation. Some people still sit in their cars on the parking lot practicing the safe practices to avoid COVID, and COVID is still with us. And some people sit in the sanctuary, and others do what you are doing and meet with us on YouTube or on Facebook. However you get here, just get here if you can. We'll be mighty glad to have you. In the meanwhile, God bless you and have a good evening.